The four questions. Have you ever heard of a marriageable hand becoming a minister? That was what happened in the land of Panchaprastha long, long ago. The king and queen there were devotees of Kartikeya. They had three female children in succession. They poured their affection on them and they grew up to be beautiful princesses, well behaved and accomplished. The king and queen were, however, sad as they did not have a son who could succeed the king when the time came. They intensified their worship of the Lord in the hope that he would bless them with a son. The Lord did, and the queen gave birth to a son. He was named after the Lord and came to be called Shanmugananda, which is one of the several names of Kartikeya. In course of time, Shanmuga married Princess Chandramukhi. They too were a devotee couple and spent most of the time visiting temples and offering worship. To them was born a son. Their joy knew no bounds when they saw that the baby's chubby face had a divine look. They called him Pujamukha, worth of worship. He was trained just as every prince would normally be trained and educated. However, by the time his parents became old and he ascended the throne, the young king of Panchaprastha had turned cruel, arrogant, and hot tempered. So much so, everybody in the court was afraid of him and his anger. The ministers were no exception. One of them, the minister in charge of place affairs, happened to earn his wrath once. Pujamuk was in the habit of offering worship at the Kartikeya temple within the palace princess every morning, as the Lord was the deity of the royal family. A treasured possession of the temple was a full grown peacock. And the peacock, as you know, is the Vahana of the Lord Kartikeya. As the king came out of the temple every day, he would spend some time watching the frolics of the peacock. That day he waited for a long time, but the peacock did not make its appearance. Naturally, Pujamuk was furious. He turned to the priest who had accompanied him from the temple. He pleaded ignorance, Your Majesty. Right from dawn, I was inside the temple, ignoring the idol and making preparations for your visit. I had no occasion to come out till now, and I have no idea where did the bird has disappeared. The king stamped his way back to his chambers. When he sat in court later, his eyes were flashing red with anger. The ministers at once realized that something was amiss, but the king withheld an outburst to give full impact to what he had in mind. One after the other, the ministers stood up and gave an account of the state of the kingdom in their respective areas of charge. The palace affairs came last, and the minister rose on his trembling feet, as he had already received the news of the missing peacock. The peacock, he mumbled, without knowing how to broach the subject. King Pujamuk cut him short. Yes, the peacock. Where has it disappeared? I was expecting you to find out before you come to the court. You know what reverence I have for the bird? If it has disappeared, then you have no place here. You too disappear forever. The king was peremptory in announcing the minister's banishment from the kingdom. He had not expected such an extreme punishment. He bowed low before the king and pleaded for mercy. But the king was not willing or ready to listen to the minister's explanation or to revise his decision. Though hot tempered, Pujamukh had some measures of justice and fairness in his cruelty. He relented, but assured himself that ultimately the minister would pay the price of dereliction of duty. If you can answer four questions, the king told the minister in stern terms, I shall reconsider my decision. The questions are: what's the distance between the palace and heaven? How much water is there in the sea? What happens in hell? How much I am worth? The minister sighed. Sure, here was an opportunity to escape the king's punishment. But does anyone know how far heaven is? Can anyone measure the water in the sea? Unless somebody once returns from the hell, how can anyone know what's taking place there? No doubt he is the king. But how much is a king worth? The minister noticed the king fidgeting in his throne, impatient for the answers. Sire, I can't think of the correct answers to your questions. Maybe if you will be kind enough to grant me a day or two, I shall come back with the answers. Why two? Said the king tauntingly. Take 4 full days. But if you fail to appear on the fifth day, you need not come back at all. The king rose and left for his chambers. Now that was quite an unexpected breather, thought the minister. In fact, he even planned to scour the nearby jungle for the peacock for the next 4 days, and that would also give him enough time to pore over the four questions. He straightway went to the royal stable to select a horse. Give me a horse, he told the young stable hand. That would not stop for 4 days. 4 days? You're going a long distance, sir, the boy asked. As the stable hand got busy grooming a white horse, the minister described the misfortune that had overtaken him. The boy was all the while churning the 4 questions in his mind. At last, the horse was ready to mount. You can take him now, the stable hand told the minister. But, sir, may I ask for a favor? If you kindly give me your robe and turban, I would like to present myself to the king and give him the answers to the questions. Meanwhile, you can search for the peacock, and I am sure you will succeed in finding it in some corner of the jungle. You'll answer the questions? Did you say? The ministers could not believe his ears. All right, you go and try your luck. And in that case, the king is not satisfied with the answers. He would at least have the peacock back in the palace. Of course, if I succeed in tracing it. The minister handed his robe and turban to the stable boy before mounting the horse and riding away. On the fourth morning, King Pujamuk was surprised to see all the ministers' seats occupied. As usual, the ministers took turns to present their reports. When the minister in charge of palace affairs stood up, the king did not even look at him. He merely asked, Are you ready with the answers? I am, your majesty, said the stable boy, who had clothed himself in the ministerial robe. Very well, let me have them, the king said, without raising his head. The first question was, How far is heaven from here? Wasn't it? Right from this hall, it is 36,854,072 and a half miles to be exact. You may add another 22 paces from your throne to where the guards stand. You seem to have got it accurately, remarked the king, adding in a harsher tone. But how will you prove it? Have the distance measured, your majesty? The minister replied promptly. And if there is any discrepancy, you may hang me. How will you answer my second question? Asked the king. You wanted to know how much water there is in the sea, didn't you? This was rather difficult to find out. As you know, the sea is never still, and every time a new wave hits the shore, it adds the water content. Yet, I have been able to find out that the water in the sea can fill 25,982,000 glasses. If you collect the water from each wave, it will fill another 222 glasses. Now the king sat up in his throne. How did you know this? He asked. I did not measure it myself, the minister replied nonchalantly. I mercifully guessed after some calculations. If you have any doubt, you can send someone to the seashore with some glasses and measure the water. And if you find my guess has gone wrong, you may send me to the prison. The king had no remark to make. How about my third question? Ah, that was about hell, wasn't it? I have been able to find out that there is hanging, beating, cutting off hands and legs, and even of heads going on there. In fact, it is not much different from what is happening in this kingdom, the minister replied calmly. The king was not happy over the minister's remark. What audacity, he thought. But checking himself, he asked, How do you know? Sire, last night I was passioned by the prison, and a ghost accosted me. He was the gardener whom you had ordered to be hanged because the trees this season failed to bear fruit, for no fault of his. He told me he had only gone from one hell to another. If you don't want to believe me, why don't you recall him from the hell? The court, which was till then engulfed in silence, suddenly burst out in laughter. The king put an end to it by shouting, What's your answer to my fourth question? You wish to know how much you are worth, am I right? The minister said. Well, I don't know how much you are really worth, but your face, Mukha, value is just zero, pujam, if you allow me to put it that way. What? What did you say? A zero? Me? The king of Panchaprastha? Pujamu could not control his anger. He drew his sword and approached the minister threateningly. It was then that he saw the boy's face. You're not my minister. Who are you? The stable boy knelt at the king's feet and waited for him to say, Rise up. When he stood up, he removed the robe and the turban to reveal his true identity. He then explained all that had taken place between him and the minister. The king realized that here was someone cleverer than his minister. Well, then, he said, since he allowed you to take his place, I am making you my minister. When he comes back tomorrow, tell him that he can remain in the stable and look after the horses. This story should have ended here, but as you may like to know what happened to the peacock, It had by itself returned to the palace, unnoticed by anyone. The minister came back, crestfallen after a weary search in the jungle. But he consoled himself with the thought that he need not leave the kingdom but stay back, keeping company with horses. What do you say? Okay, friends, if you like my story, please like and subscribe. Don't forget to share. Thank you.